and welcome to KNN Nightly News with me, Wolf Blitzer. It is December 2nd, 1954, and in a moment we will be going to interview with prominent members of the Joseph McCarthy trial. But first, we go to San Pedro Island, where the Cabo Miyamoto trial continues. Miyamoto, a lifelong resident of San Pedro Island and a Japanese-American, has been accused of murdering local fisherman Carl Hine, who drowned last month after suffering wounds to the head. Just days away from the 13th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, tensions ran high in the courtroom as Carl's mother, Etta Hine, revealed angry sentiments toward the Japanese community and brought light to a vicious feud between her and the Miyamoto family. We go there live.
Hi, Wolf. I'm here with Etta Hine, mother of the victim. Etta, could you tell us what happened with the Miyamotos?
Those dirty Japs stole my land, and now they stole my son! They should burn in!
Whoa. We have some viewers that might be offended by that, Etta. Could you just tell us what happened?
Well, my husband Carl bought a large amount of land and sold 7 acres of it to the Miyamoto family back in 1934. It was an 8-year lease-to-own contract, and I was entirely opposed to it from the beginning.
Sorry to interrupt, Etta, but isn't it true that the only way Japanese Americans could obtain land was through lease-to-own agreements on account of anti-Japanese land laws, which forbade Japanese immigrants from obtaining land in San Pedro?
Yes, and that's just the way it should be. But anyway, after being gone for years at that internment camp, that scum-ridden Jap Kabuo thought he could come back and keep paying me for the land. Well, certainly not. My husband was long gone by then, and I wanted to make sure that those dirty, rotten Japs couldn't...
Okay, that's enough, Etta. Thank you. This is Gertrude Dolly reporting live.
Oh, thank you, Gertrude, for that interesting report. We are back live. Now we have Judge Fielding here to give us his interesting opinion on the proceedings. Judge, what are your thoughts on the case?
To be honest, Wolf, this trial is a tricky one. On one hand, we have some pretty convincing evidence that Kabuo Miyamoto is indeed guilty of Hine's murder, and on the other, we have major racial conflicts within the San Pedro community that may be swaying the jury's view of the evidence. We know for sure that there was some sort of exchange between Miyamoto and Hine on the night of Hine's death based on some of Miyamoto's equipment found on Hine's boat, and as well as the discovery of some of Hine's blood on Miyamoto's boat. For many, this evidence seems to be enough to convict Miyamoto. However, I really wonder whether it's the evidence or previous prejudice that is having an impact on the community's opinion. There is an obvious racial divide here in San Pedro. You can see it just from sitting in the courtroom. Those of Japanese descent are always seated together at the back of the room as if second-class citizens, and the white residents are always seated together at the front.
And how exactly do you think that this racial conflict is impacting the trial?
Oh, excuse me, Wolf, I'm actually over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyway, this community has really always struggled with racial prejudices. They've tried to bridge the gap by naming a young Japanese girl Queen of the Strawberry Festival each year, but the Second World War has really taken a particularly heavy toll on the residents of San Pedro. During the war, those of Japanese descent were forced to leave their homes and lives on the island behind and move into internment camps with just 8 days' notice. Meanwhile, the large German-American population received no animosity from the government or other residents. I'm afraid that the Japanese resentment for the German Americans, as well as perhaps some remaining anti-Japanese sentiments from the war, will really sway the jury's view on the evidence when it comes time to make a final decision on this case.
Interesting. Thanks for coming in. And now we go back to our field reporter, Gertrude Dolly, who's currently with Ishmael Chambers, who is a reporter in San Pedro Island, who's had a major role in the coverage for the Miyamoto trial. We go there live.
Ishmael, could you tell us about your participation in the Miyamoto case?
Yes, well, it's certainly been difficult to have my wife Hatsu involved in the trial.
Sorry, just to clarify, Hatsu Miyamoto is married to Kabuo Miyamoto, the accused, correct?
No, Hatsu is mine. We had shared wonderful times together in our youth, and we were lovers forever, and we are still bonded by our love. No rings were swapped per se, but will always be lovers.
Sorry to interrupt, Ishmael, but witnesses have said that Hatsu refused to speak to you yesterday at the courtroom. How could you say that you have any sort of relationship with her?
Let me tell you about our romance together when we were young, and a night we spent together in a cedar tree when...
That's enough. Hatsu is here with us. Hatsu, there's been a lot of speculation about your relationship with Ishmael. Would you care to comment on this?
He's a very strange man. I don't like him. He cannot be part of my culture, so I don't want him to have any part of my life.
Shocking. So you and Ishmael have no relationship whatsoever.
Hatsu, I've loved you since I first laid eyes on you. Let me express my love for you in a song. You are so beautiful to me.
No, I don't like you. Get away from me.
Hatsu, we're meant to be.
Well, it's chaos here in San Pedro Island with love and confusion in the air. Back to you, Wolf.
Oh, and we are back. Thank you for that report, Gertrude. Very interesting stuff. I'm quite the Joe Cocker fan myself. But now, Gertrude is back with a hematologist expert who will plan to testify in court tomorrow. Back to you, Gertrude.
I'm here now with medical expert Horace Whaley. Horace, could you share some interesting information you found on Carl's autopsy?
I'm glad you asked. Karl Heinz's body was one of the most beautiful I've ever seen. He was tall, muscular, pronounced thighs.
Oh, I was referring to the evidence you obtained to determine if Cablo was involved in this murder.
Yes, of course. When I looked at the cut on Karl's head, I couldn't help but notice the similarities it shared to wounds Japanese soldiers inflicted on Americans during the war. While serving as a medical officer, I saw countless deaths caused by the kendo fighting style, which the Japanese are very familiar with. It resulted in a wound over the left ear, similar to this wound.
You are aware that Cablo Miyamoto was an American soldier during the war, correct?
Yes, I'm just sharing the evidence that I found.
There is also evidence to support that the victim drowned. Could you tell us about that?
Based on a foamy substance found in the victim's lungs, it would appear he was alive when he entered the water.
So to clarify, the victim could not have died by the head injury?
It appears that way. Impossible to say for sure.
Thank you, Horace.
Excellent. Thanks for that preview of what we might see in the trial tomorrow. Now, Gertrude is back with Etta Hine to ask her a few more questions in coherence with a we'll go live.
Thanks, Wolf. We'd like to interview Etta on your speculation on your son's death, not on your feelings to Japanese people. Do you understand?
Yes, of course.
Alright, well, Etta, a lot of people believe that Carl could have easily just fallen off the boat and drowned. Do you think that's possible? Was he clumsy?
Now let me tell you something about Japanese people. They're sneaky little hooligans. They tried to sneak up behind us during the war, and now they've tried to sneak up behind my son and murder him. I won't let them get away with this just because they're such pathetic excuses for...
That's enough. That's enough. Thank you for your interesting opinion, Etta. Back to you.
Oh, and we are back live. Well, the trial continues and is still uncertain who is responsible for the death of Karl Hein. We will bring more updates later tonight on Como Nightly News. And remember, this is Wolf Blitzer reporting.